So namaste. And welcome to Satsang. So I wanted to use this extra time that we've got to do something that I wanted to do for quite some time and never really got around to, which is to read from my books. This was the first book that I ever wrote, and it was really a culmination of all the ways that I had found to tune into the self, to notice the self, because that was the first thing that I struggled with myself on the pathway. And I see a lot of people having the same issue. So this book was the culmination of everything I discovered about how to do that, because until you've recognized what you really are in some way, and until you come to realize that that's easy to tune into, then it's just all mental knowledge, what we're saying in satsang, and it's not really going to help in a deep and profound way. So I wanted to read from this today and really just spend some time. I'll probably just comment on it when I feel the urge to do so. And then I'll take some questions at the end, as always. So I'll start from the beginning. I'm not going to read all of the sections. I'll probably take a couple of satsangs to go through this book. If there are any particular chapters of the book that you want me to focus on, you can email evolutionspirit@gmail.com, and just, if there's a chapter of the book that you're studying currently and you want me to go into in more detail, you have a question about it, obviously ask it today online, or you can email if you want to ask it anonymously. So introduction. This book is primarily written as an instruction manual. It came as a response to the hundreds of questions from students along the lines of, I know this mentally, but how do I live like this? Over and over again, students would have insights and revelations into what they really are. Time and time again, a glimpse would be seen that in fact we are not separate people, nor have we ever been. These glimpses came often for many, but still there seemed to be little clear instruction on how to dissolve the egoic sense of self. This book is written for that purpose. It's one thing to see what you are, and it's another thing altogether to fully dedicate your life to your total awakening. Few are the ones that have walked all the way to the end of the road, and this is due to many factors that we'll look into. So I saw over and over again people that would have a glimpse or a revelation, or even a sustained 2-month period of recognizing what they are. It just seemed effortless to be that they're not a tangible thing at all, that they're not the body. And then time and time again, our egoic self, sense of self, our separate sense of self would reemerge and seemingly eclipse the real self. And that was really the motivation for writing this. What stops people awakening? The first reason most people don't wake up is that they don't have a clear insight into what they actually are. If you're reading this book and have not had a glimpse of what you are, of the Noumenon itself, it's okay. Throughout the course of applying what you read here, you'll begin to see the truth of your being over and over. This book will help those fastest that have seen and have chosen in their hearts to live from this place of truth. It is intended for those that find it simply impossible to spend one more day as a separate person because it's no longer tolerable. So I just want to stop there and just talk about briefly why I've used the word Noumenon rather than self, or there's many words used for it throughout the book and throughout my teaching, but Noumenon for me was a word that I came across when I was on the path, and It really is, the classic way to describe it is the opposite of a phenomena. So a phenomenon is something that is coming and going. It has a shape, a size, a duration. It's perceivable either with your eyes, like look around this room and see phenomena, objects. And you can also perceive phenomena inside, so thoughts, experiences, emotions, sensations. All of those are coming and going. They don't last forever. And I found in my own pathway, the word Noumenon had no baggage at all. And there is a chapter later which I'll read that describes the definition of the Noumenon. So I won't do that now, but it doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you're not allowing your ideas about it. So if I think I know what awareness is, then I'm going to be operating as an egoic sense of self from here. If instead I'm directly experiencing awareness, then I am dissolving my ego, and there is nothing in between there. So regardless of your experience or knowledge in these matters, this book is for you. It will help you begin from wherever you're starting from and move into total freedom from the mind. The second reason we don't usually wake up is because we have believed it's too hard, or it'll cost us too much, and that losing our sense of being a person is a huge sacrifice that we will always regret. We can also fear that we'll become some kind of automaton or robot with no ability to think for ourselves upon awakening. Now, these may seem strange to say, but these were all fears that stopped me along the way, so they're included here. This book really is kind of my autobiography in a way. This is simply not true, and this book will help you see that. The third reason is because we have had very few contemporary examples of awakened beings in our lives. We have heard of the great sages and avatars that lived long ago. We may see living teachers here now around us on YouTube, but deep down in our mind, we believe that enlightenment is only for the lucky few, or those that have a superhuman ability to concentrate. We may also believe that we need to have a living teacher to talk to, or that it's impossible to wake up fully in one lifetime. All these myths pervade the human consciousness and stop us from believing in our own liberation. So, whatever we believe, because we are already the self and that we've never been a separate person, whatever we believe is going to come true for us. So if as I used to believe, I needed a living teacher to sit with, then my awakening really didn't progress until I was somehow accidentally ended up sitting in front of one. Only after that did I realize it's not necessary, and these days we're so wonderfully blessed with the internet. So whatever we're feeling is going to limit us. If we feel that we're limited because we can't sit in the same room as the teacher, or we're across the other side of the world, or we may never meet them physically and hug, then that's going to be your experience. If instead you can come to realize the Noumenon is not the physical body sat here, teacher is not a physical body, and that they're already unlimited as you are, then there really needs to be no difference between whether you're sat right here or wherever you're watching from. It's time to make a new paradigm, one in which many of us wake up and it becomes easier and easier for those that follow us because we have been living examples of truth. And the fact is possible. Never has it been easier to wake up fully out of your limited sense of self and into total peace. Never has there been more help readily available through books like this and over the internet. Everything is set up for you to wake up fully and shine as your true being. But you mustn't believe that it's impossible for you, even when others may tell you it's not, and even when your mind may tell you it's not. You're not being asked to become anything other than you already are. You are only being asked to see clearly and then to make a stand for freedom. All you need will come to you to complete the journey, and detailed instructions are given in this book to help. Are you ready? So I'm going to just skip a few sections here. Talk about why do we use the word Noumenon rather than God. Throughout the book, there are many names given to what you are, such as silence, stillness, being, pure awareness, and many more. These are all names for that which has no name and is in no need of a name. It cannot be described in words, yet we must use some label for it so that we may point towards it in the text. We use the word Noumenon most often because it has very little, if any, previous meanings to most people. The Buddha avoided the use of the word God because to most people this word had so much baggage attached to it and so much programming around it. So each one of us has a vibrational meaning attached to the word God. And for any names, for myself, in my own pathway, I remember even just hearing the word self brought about this sense of failure and never going to get there-ness, this kind of heavy energy that was really associated with this word that we can be carrying without even realizing. So it's good to have a word, or as I try to do, change whatever I'm calling the self as frequently as possible so that we don't get attached to one particular word. Today's modern spiritual seeker is very well read and educated and is often used to terms such as true self or pure awareness, God, enlightenment, truth, reality, and many others. It therefore serves us to use a name that has very little previous connections for most people and accurately describes what it refers to. Awakening is really letting go of all we believe and think to be true. And as such, we'll have to let go eventually of what we think reality is and what we think we are. The term Noumenon helps us to do that. The meaning it has for you will be developed by you, from the inside out, and not read about, learned, or thought about. This is the best gift I can give you, the chance to find out for yourself. So, Chapter 1. What is the Noumenon? So the Noumenon is what you are, but you've been taught to think of yourself as a phenomenon. The Noumenon is a very useful name for what you really are, and as such it will always be capitalized in this book. It's useful to look at the classical definition of the Noumenon and its opposite, which is a phenomenon, plural phenomena. So right here, I want to say there is no opposite to the Noumenon. There's no finite versus infinite. There is no self versus ego. And there really is no Noumenon versus phenomena. But for the sake of teaching, I'm pointing towards what I'm trying to convey. The classical descriptions definitions might be helpful. So the Noumenon is defined as a thing as it is in itself, as distinct from a thing that is knowable by the senses. So the Noumenon is a thing which is knowable only without the use of ordinary sense perception. And the third definition, very similar, a thing that cannot be experienced through the senses. So the rest of our life until we get to satsang, perceiving through our senses and thinking about what we're perceiving is going to be enough. Or, perceiving our inner experience, our thoughts, our emotions, and thinking about those are going to be enough. So the Noumenon is the first thing that you cannot, initially at least, its formless aspect, perceive through your senses. How are you supposed to recognize it then? If it's, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, it doesn't have any shape at all. Only by contrast, really, and that's why we've included the definition of a phenomenon. So a phenomenon is the object of a person's perception, so something I can see in my environment, or think about inside. A fact or a situation that is observed to exist. An event, fact, or happening that can be observed to occur. So what's the defining thing? The noumenon is that which is observing, and the phenomena that we see either inside or outside, which are really the same anyway, but are being observed by it. So we can see from these definitions that the noumenon is something that you cannot experience through the physical senses. You cannot see it, taste it, touch it, or smell it. You can also know that the noumenon is not something that has a finite existence in time, meaning it has no start or ending. You can contrast this with a phenomenon which has a distinct start and end in time and has a duration or a lifespan. So everything that comes and goes has a duration, whether it's a momentary thought, an experience that we're having, our own body has a finite lifespan. A phenomenon can be seen, felt, touched, or experienced. The noumenon cannot. We cannot come to know what we are and live as that by using just the methods that have worked in the past. And this is why most people struggle for quite some time to grasp what the noumenon is. And that's the reason for this book, the purpose of it. How do we learn to perceive without our senses? So the noumenon is always presenting itself to us. It must be here right now, everywhere, all the time, never leaving and nowhere absent from anywhere. Not capable of being over here or over there. It's just ever present equally because it's one, it's indivisible and whole. And so if you can grasp that we have to shift our way of perceiving to a different way of looking, then we can quite easily come to see the noumenon. And it doesn't matter whichever way you perceive it, whichever way in to the self, to the noumenon, it's presenting itself in a lot of different ways all the time if we know how to look. So thinking about the noumenon or the self is not the same as experiencing it directly. That's the first thing really to sort of grasp a hold of. And most people end up in satsang because they're so tired of thought about objects. Mind can think about objects that are really here, but it can also think about objects and things and events, experiences that happened before. My mind likes to obsessively think of things that may happen, the what if, with a lot of fear. If your thinking is based in the past, there might be shame or guilt over what has happened before. But mind cannot think about really effectively that which can't be seen, the noumenon itself, although it will try. So just to recognize thinking about the self is going to sustain your sense of being a separate someone. Even if those thoughts are, I am the self, I am the noumenon, I am infinite, I am everywhere, all pervading, I was never born, never going to die. That it's all coming from one brain in one location, really, and all that is perceived in that which has no location, the noumenon. So if you can really grasp this is why the instructions have always been by the great teacher, just stay as the self. And just going to mute, there we go. The instructions have always been to stay as the self, really, because we're either sustaining our egoic sense of self by thinking about awakening, thinking about our progress, which is coming from somewhere in time and space in one location, or we are actually being the self. We are directly experiencing what we are, noticing the awareness, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And there is nothing in between. which is why at some point we end up putting books like this down and really just beginning to be that as often as possible. There's some facts and knowledge it's helpful to know, really to break down our egoic sense of self, and we'll begin to look into that later. So the change of value and habits. So in this process, we're really only turning around two habits. And habit one is to value phenomena above that in which they arise, and to value phenomena as the most important thing. And the phenomena that we value more than anything at all is thought. What I think about myself, my world, everything in the world. And usually for most of us, when we get to satsang, what I think about my awakening is valued subconsciously somehow more than the space of your being in which it's arising. So we're just turning around that habit. Habit two, the habit of putting all of our attention on what comes and goes and giving no attention at all to what is eternal. So the thing that's really struck me at one point is whenever I used to go anywhere at all, my attention would immediately go to the people and the objects in the room, and absolutely no attention at all was given to the space in the room and to myself in which all of that was appearing. And when you see that we've kind of been hypnotized by, there's nothing wrong at all with objects and with thinking, but if your attention is automatically going to that, to those, so much so that you find it very difficult to put any attention on the formless reality in which all that is appearing, then you're going to find it difficult. So how do we turn that around? The same way that any sage or teacher has done, any enlightened being has done the same process that we're going through right now, which is firstly to notice there is something else to focus on, and then that isn't an object and it can't be seen through the senses. And then secondly, to really learn how to see that, to access that. So it's always going to appear as something unchanging, the Noumenon. So I just want to fast forward a little bit. The Noumenon is not some faraway mystical concept. It is that which hears the inner speech of thoughts and the outer speech of words. It is that which sees the inner images in the mind and outer images of the physical world. The question, what is the Noumenon, is heard by the Noumenon. This sense of me is not what you think it is. So, how do we dissolve the ego? We don't necessarily need to make an effort to dissolve the ego because it does not really exist as an actual entity. Although it seems to. Boy, does it seem to. It is simply a collection of very familiar thoughts mixed with attention and our investment of belief that they are my thoughts or they're me. So when I'm first coming to my awakening, the very beginning, I really will believe that my thoughts are me. You know, I am what I think about the world. So if someone challenges my opinions, I'll become quite aggressive towards them. As we're moving further along the pathway, we'll start to say these thoughts are mine, but they're not me. So eventually there's the maturing in that process. This collective bundle of beliefs about life, ourself, the world, God, and the universe is what we take ourselves to be and needs constant reinforcement. This is the real thing to realize. Note how often you hear people constantly reaffirming their me-ness when talking about how it seems when talking, and how it seems more real when you talk about it. So if you go to any supermarket or wherever, whatever you're watching on TV or anything, everyone is constantly talking about how they think, how they feel, how somebody else thinks and feels. It's all based on phenomena and how it's perceived from one point in time and space. When did you ever hear someone in the supermarket talk about the formless reality of all that is. But, it may happen, but I didn't personally experience that myself. So the egoic sense of self, and this is really important to understand this bit, the egoic sense of self, of being a separate someone, needs an enormous amount of energy to be fed to it constantly. And this has been happening for so long that you've forgotten just how much. As you begin to take attention away from the sense of you begin to feel more and more effortless state appearing. This perhaps may be the first taste of the Noumenon. It feels like home, security, completeness, and peace. It may initially take some effort on our part to stay vigilant as we hold attention on what is true about us and refuse attention going with thoughts. Attention automatically will go with thoughts if we don't stay observant. So by not participating in this work, we are automatically sustaining our egoic sense of self. There's nothing wrong with our ego at all. Just to notice there is a different way to perceive, and that once you realize how to perceive the space in which your body and ego is appearing, and then secondly confirm that that is really what you are, the ego is appearing inside you, then you'll have no fear of death, of the body leaving. You won't feel diminished or anything like that. In fact, you'll have no fear at all. So, why do we want to dissolve the ego? As long as we feel deep down that we're separate from God, from what we want, from life, from others around us, or from even the Noumenon, we will always act from a basis of lack, fear, and survival. Inherent in the state of being separate is lack, so not enoughness in whichever way it's appearing. Maybe a physical thing like money or a relationship that we want, or it may be an inner thing like a lack of peace, lack of confidence, lack of feeling approved of, self-respect. So inherent in the sense of being separate is lack and fear. We'll always believe ourselves to be the one trying to get back to God or find our way home. Whether we believe we need outer tangible things or inner tangible things, we will always be constantly driven with no rest inside. We will always be trying to accumulate knowledge, power, wealth, friends, love, security, and whatever else we think we need to be happy and safe. So even this drive to find the self, even the drive to find the Noumenon, and then the drive of mind, of ego shifted for me after I'd seen it to really wanting to live as it. So even that drive is going to take over our life, and there's nothing wrong with it. But eventually it has to come to an end, to a finding, to a realizing, actually, I am that in which that search has been appearing. And the one who seems to be searching is just an old idea that I have about myself. And really, I am removed from that already. The egoic sense of self was needed to ensure the survival of the human species, but now it's time to let go of all limiting self-definitions and wake up fully to the truth of your being. You are the Noumenon watching another human experience. And once you know this, you'll live in peace. The only way to live in this true reality is to be willing to see where you have still believed yourself to be something limited and finite. If you're willing to see this, then it will dissolve and you're free. Enjoying the human experience without any fear. Take in all that life has to offer and know that you cannot end. Live this life in this body fully and embrace every experience, but from your true place of being the infinite one. So just one more quick chapter and then we'll skip to some of the actual practices. So dealing with fear. On any pathway, it's likely that fear about fully letting go into the truth will arise at some point. But here, this pathway will be greatly diminished because you will have seen already what you are. If you have read this book and followed the instructions carefully, you will have all the tools that you need to allow the process of awakening to occur as quickly and easily as possible. Everyone will be tested along the pathway, but here you will always have easy and simple instructions to help you in those difficult times. As you walk along the pathway, know that every enlightened sage that has ever walked this planet is with you. Every saint is for you. Every master is beside you. All those that have done it are supporting you in unseen ways, and grace is helping you as you make each step. Know that you do not need to know how to get through the next challenge. Help is here for the asking. It can come in an infinite number of ways. Devote yourself only to truth, to God or the self. Your heart should beat only to see the truth in everything and everyone you see. Then you will live in the kingdom of heaven. So if you learn how to tune in, as we call it in this book, to the real self, because it's already here. So we're just tuning in as if you're listening to a radio station. You want to change, probably showing my age now, but the old radios had an actual dial that you could change from one station. The frequency was just slightly different. That's all we're doing. We're just shifting focus from only using our senses and mind to perceive to really sort of stepping back metaphorically and noticing that which is watching the senses, that which hears the thought, is also hearing the outer speech. So we're just tuning in to something that's already there. So again, coming from that perspective, you cannot fail to access the Noumenon because it's already here and it's not got something that you've got to create in your own experience. Just shifting focus back. For myself, I remember vividly one day watching a gardening program for some reason. And it started and there was this beautiful flower that they were showcasing in someone's garden. And the image of this flower was so crisp and clean, and it was just beautiful. Couldn't see anything else in the screen at all. And then the angle of the camera, they just zoomed right back to where the camera actually was. And you could see the whole garden in which this flower was just one of all these other things appearing in the garden with all this color and difference of species of plants and flowers. And I remember thinking that that is exactly like the process of awakening, in a way that we're zoomed in completely to one mind and body, really firmly believing this is me. And then awakening is a process of really sort of zooming back out and going, wow, there's all the rest of this that's me. And I'm the lens through, the body is the lens through which I'm looking. But I'm not particularly any one thing in what I'm seeing. So if you've had a taste of what you already are and you can access it, why is that so important? Because when mind suggests that it's scary or that you shouldn't let go of your old egoic beliefs about yourself, that you shouldn't transcend them, which it will suggest that, absolutely will, then you can turn around, you're having your own direct experience and be able to say to mind, it's just not scary at all. It just feels like silence, it just feels like peace, it just feels like awareness. There's nothing scary at all about my real self. Our egoic sense of self fears God, fears the self, because it cannot understand what it is. The ego is appearing inside your real self, the Noumenon, and it cannot understand what is outside of it, except for what it's learned about the self, about God, over the eons. And we've all had plenty of programming in that area, so we don't really need to talk about that anymore. But if you can have a direct experience of what you are, then you're not going to be afraid when mind says, oh, you shouldn't really go any further with this. So I just want to read from a couple, there's a list in this book of the different practices, which are really all the same thing, important to know. of different ways of finding how the self, the Noumenon, is appearing right now. I'm not going to read them all. I'll read some next week. I want to leave some time for questions as well. So maybe worth just chapter 4, learning to tune in. So all of us have had many years of practice, lifetimes even, learning to focus attention on the phenomena of thoughts, feelings, and outer events. We all have attachments, patterns that we use to distract us. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, lovely. So we all have attachments. We all have patterns we use to distract ourselves, even self-sabotaging thoughts and other programming that have been running us. For these reasons, we need to devote some time each day to true meditation. This is a simple practice of no practice. This is a non-doing practice, which means that we're not trying to get anywhere. This is really different to what we're used to doing as human beings. All of our egoic perspective is about trying to get somewhere, really trying to become something that we're not already, trying to be better than we are, trying to get rid of certain things about us that we don't want, trying to gain certain things that we do want. So all of these practices are going to be about just being as you actually are in this moment. Why is that beneficial? Really, because only when you can learn to accept and be exactly as you are in this moment can what you really want start to happen for you. If we are, and this is totally counterintuitive to our mind, if we are constantly in resistance to what is manifesting, has manifested now, already in this moment, you cannot change that at all. You absolutely cannot change what has shown up already. But in a deep acceptance and of exactly how we are, how the world is right now in this moment, then we're much more open to a higher possibility unfolding. So counterintuitive mind says, if I reject what is now, then what will be better. In reality, it's the other way around. If I reject what is right now, I'm going to be feeling a sense of want and need. I need this thing that's here right now, either inside me or out there, to disappear, or I need this thing that's happening, and then I want it to come. Then I'm going to be vibrating I need. My very next moment is going to be I still need. If instead I can accept, maybe not like how things are right now, or what I'm feeling, or what's being experienced, then it has every possibility in the world of changing into something that we do like. Bearing in mind that everything out here is always changing, always. All these forms are constantly in flux. And the only reason we seem to get the same thing over and over again in some area of our life is because we are rejecting what is, or trying to hold on to what is. And the ego is really that mechanism. It's either pushing against something or trying to grab a hold of something. So if we can come to understand that the Noumenon, being the Noumenon, is a third option where we aren't pushing against and we aren't trying to hold on to, just being in that sort of open space in which everything is happening and allowing what is happening to change on its own, trusting that when we do that, and from our own experience, that things evolve to the way that we want them to be. So tuning in. I want you to think of this practice as if you were tuning into a portable radio so that it can pick up a radio station that's already being broadcast. Learning to pay attention to yourself is like that too. You don't need to do anything to make the broadcast happen and to listen to the silent field. You simply need to know how to tune in. The Noumenon is beyond time and space, infinite in its capacity. It's omnipresent and available at all times, in all places. There is nowhere that it's not present, and that includes you, right here and now. Knowing that the Noumenon must be here now allows you to simply relax and begin to tune in. Just like it does not even need to be searched for, but simply noticed. So if you're searching for something, you're actually saying with your energy that it's not here right now. If you're just going to notice what's already here, that's an effortless thing. So just like if you're listening to loud music and it suddenly stopped, immediately the silence is noticeable in the absence of noise. The Noumenon is that which is apparent in the absence of all things or phenomena. You don't have to get rid of all thoughts to notice the Noumenon. It's enough to simply see that all thoughts are appearing in this vast field of awareness that you are. Something is hearing your thoughts. What is it? The silent Noumenon is always listening, open, aware, and observing in a very impartial way to all that is occurring in it. Relaxing and listening is the key. Knowing it is here already and feeling for it is the key. So if it's already here, what you are, and you know that must be true because you're here, then striving in any way at all or exerting any effort to find it is going to be counterproductive. You're going to be coming from this place that you're not already, that, and it's something you need to figure out. How much effort must you make to be what you already are? How hard will it be to find what is always here, all the time, and in all places? We lost connection there for a moment. Can you all hear me okay still? Thumbs up. So. Okay.
Mine's pretty much frozen now, Helen. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, say that again, sorry.
Mine's pretty much frozen now.
Okay. If you